Oh, I have a story.
Aha.
It's not all that exciting, but I ended up taking myself to the ER room Saturday night. That was kind of an exciting thing.
How about the reason
Uh,
for going there? That must be even more exciting.
yeah, it's not all that exciting. But so I woke up and I was scratching myself right here, and something kind of kinked. What? And I grabbed my fingernail and it went, and I pulled off a tick. And so I looked at, and the head was still in. I busted it off pretty good when just scratching. And so I worked with tweezers and stuff to get it out of there, and that was that. And then 24 hours later, it's all swollen up and inflamed. And so I was talking with my niece and her husband, who one of their kids has Lyme disease, and I think he does too. I believe anyway. One of my great nieces does, and it's really been distracting to her whole life experience.
Yeah.
So they know a lot about tick bites, and they've done this research for years. And so they started. So we're looking at it, and this is like 10 o'clock at night. We're out by the bonfire. We had a fire going all day to burn off a bunch of berry bushes and stuff.
Huh.
And so we're sitting out at the end of the fire, and in he goes, man, you get yourself to urgent care or whatever. And I was really what? And so we talk about it, and then in conversation he goes, if he says, can you go now? Can you go to? And I'm like, well, because I was going to just go in the morning or something, but tomorrow morning is Sunday, so urgent care and then I can't go to my regular doctor, so ER is the answer anyway. And so I'm like, well, I might as well. I am just going to bed.
Yeah.
So I might as well go over to ER. So
And there are serious consequences.
And which I have now discovered and done a little bit of research and talked to the doctor, and how much there is. Ticks are really dirty little fuckers, and that there's a whole bunch of things that can happen from a tick bite. And different ticks carry different things, and different ticks have been exposed to different things, and like this idea that the ones that do carry Lyme have it's their second bite. That the tick has gone and bit a deer that has Lyme, and then fallen off, and then carried on his way, and then bit the second thing that it bites, and it carries in Lyme. And then one of the fascinating things they have discovered is there's this fence lizard, I think it's called a golden fence lizard or something like that, that has developed the antibodies that are the cure for the tick's Lyme disease, because Lyme disease is affecting that tick as well. And so there's these lizards that carry the antibody that, if they get hit by a tick, cures the tick of that Lyme. And there's an area
cures
the tick. And
Wow.
and so there's these areas on the back of this lizard's neck that are the color and I think smell that attract ticks. So ticks are attracted to biting the right spot of this lizard that's going to cure its Lyme. It's like, what? That was pretty wild to learn.
And think about discovering that. How would you,
right?
What would you
because
go
of
through
because of the studying there's research, baby, research, and people following these research paths to try to figure out what's going on with this stuff. And so along the way, the ER doc, who was very knowledgeable, and she said she knew a lot about it, and and she referred to putting me on a course of antibiotics, which I normally am not real crazy about. A course of antibiotics because ticks carry, she goes, Lyme and a whole bunch of other weird stuff. And I appreciated that sentence coming out of a doctor. A whole bunch of weird stuff. That ticks just carry a whole bunch of weird stuff. And that that there's the potential for all these different types of infections and viral stuff as well as bacterial stuff. I thought that was interesting. That the ticks can, depending on the type of tick and the tick themselves, can carry both virus issues and bacterial issues that can happen in the same bite. and all this stuff. So it was just really fascinating. So I find myself doing a little bit more research about ticks, and being even more aware of the ticks on Murphy and myself, because we spend a lot of time out. Because I think it's possible that I got that tick on the day that we sat out on the green. We sat down on the green marshy area to have a talk next to the creek. We sat on a couple of rocks. It wasn't one of our normal bench stops, right? We sat next to the creek, and it was that next morning when I scratched off that thing.
Oh.
And so I think it came from Carberry anyway. I don't know that it climbed up me when we sat there. I don't know if it came off of him later. I don't know, but I do believe it was a Carberry tick, because we have plenty of ticks out at our farm too, but it's because of where I was at. So anyway, that's my fun little story. And then I'll just add on. It was fascinating. I got to the ER about 10:30, 10 o'clock, I guess, at Saturday night. And there's no parking. All the parking spaces are filled. Even up the street, on the street parking. So I have to park up the street a good ways. And I walk into ER, and it's pretty packed up. And so they set me up. Okay, wait in the waiting room, which there's other people sleeping and stuff. And I put in an earbud and put on a meditation and just go, and I'm out. And eventually I get woken up. This nurse is shaking me. She goes, "Okay, we're going to take you in just a minute. We're so sorry about the delay." I'm like, "What delay?" Okay, whatever. And then she comes back out in a minute, and she apologizes to these other people. She goes, "We have to take him first. He's been waiting forever." And they go, "Okay, yeah, right." And so they take me back, and then another person apologizes. They go and sit me up, and they take care of me pretty quick. And the doctor apologizes about the wait. When I'm like, whatever. And then as I'm leaving there one more time, they're like, "We're really sorry about the delay." Okay. And I go out, and there's not a car anywhere. Parking lot's completely empty. Both little things. Up and down the street, there's no cars on the street except mine way up the street. And so I go up to the car, and I turn back around and I look down the road. There's no cars except way down there. And I'm like, wow, I just arrived at like the perfectly bad time, but I was good and tired.
And you did the perfect thing to do.
Yeah.
And they saw you there, and then they saw this person bleeding, and that person coughing, and that person
Yeah, and they knew I was there for a tick bite, and it's like, yep, I'm glad you came in to get seen, and a couple extra hours of not having antibiotics on board is probably fine.
They talked about you all night. Don't you think we ought to bring? No, he's asleep or
skip him, man. There's people that are dying here.
Yeah, right.
Hey, Marv. Hi, buddy. So that's my little story part of today's thing.
So what's the long-term bottom line of that story?
So I have 10, the doctor said it was going to be 2 weeks, but I think the pharmacist said 10 days of antibiotics, a couple pills a day with food. And that will, over in the Lyme disease people, they suggest doing that immediately if you ever get a tick bite as a preventative measure to help to fight back that virus while it's still weak before it has had a chance to replicate. And Lyme is an interesting one. It's much like gluten intolerance, that it's not completely accepted, and mostly from its misunderstandings. It's not always completely accepted by mainstream medicine. And gluten intolerance is really a fascinating one. How there are still doctors, although they're old, there are doctors that still say that it's not a thing.
No such thing.
And which is just wild when there's millions of people that can report specific sensitivities. And we're finding more and more that probably really is related to glyphosate in the breads in the wheat, and that stuff is a little still inconclusive, but there's plenty looking that way. That and just the hybridization of the wheat, that we didn't have. We didn't have things like gluten intolerance a couple hundred years ago, but the wheat we were eating a couple hundred years ago was a very different wheat than the mainstream wheat that we're doing now.
Yeah,
we really modified it, even just through hybridization, let alone actual genetic modification. But yeah, and Lyme disease isn't much the same. We don't understand a lot about it. It gets poo-pooed, and yet people like my niece, I mean, her whole life has been turned upside down, and she's really sensitive to a bunch of things. So, yada yada yo. Let's see. That was the story part.
So, one of the things that medicine is, like so many other things, is they have a certain amount of concrete knowledge that they really foundation stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You got that, do that.
Mm-hmm.
But really, that's only a small percentage of the hundreds of things that they prescribe all over the page. There's so many things that are, well, there's almost, although you really should do this because your chances are better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like this will solve that problem, period.
Yeah,
there's very few things of that level of absolutism or something.
Yeah, or if there is, it's something like doing some over the top measure that let's like some of the chemotherapies. Let's just poison your whole system and just wreak havoc on your whole fucking system, because that's gonna
get rid of that one.
It's gonna knock that one thing down, and other things like that. I'm using that as an example, and I do not want to be bad talking. All of that, because there's so much good and what we've learned and what we do know, but there's just still so much we don't know, and that's that interesting thing, which is kind of the story where we started this conversation about making up that we know.
Yeah,
just making up on some limited set of facts, even if the limited set of facts is a lot of facts. It's still limited in the potential possibilities.
Yeah.
And making complete snap judgments based on the smallest of things. And nowadays, particularly in medical, we have some questionable secondary agendas when there's billion-dollar industries making billions and over years trillions of dollars based on creation of medicines, and we're still being guinea pigs.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong. I'm just saying that it's a component.
Yeah.
It's a component. You just can't. It's interesting. I've had a couple really big conversations about the medical industry with some of my European friends, a couple Brits, a French or a Swiss man, and they don't have the same distrust of their medical system that most of people I know around here do. But their medical systems are very different. Their hospitals are not profit driven, and so you don't have a hospital that is sitting there going, let's see what we can extract from this particular customer.
Yeah.
Not necessarily from that individual, but this customer has insurance. Insurance will pay for these things, and all of these things have big profit margins in them. So how many of these things can we get that insurance company to pay while this person is here? And that's just capitalism. I with no heat on it, with no hatred. It's just part of the system. We know we're in a capitalist system, and with having profit motivated hospitals and healthcare, that's gonna happen. It's just gonna happen. And there's a big piece of it. It's like if I go in, I break a leg, and I go in, and they're like, hey, we could just x-ray it, but you might have broken some vessels and stuff that doesn't show up on an x-ray, so we'd like to send you through an MRI. And I'm like, great, I wouldn't mind having an MRI. Let's do an MRI. And we know that the hospital is going to make an extra $3,000 from my insurance company because of that MRI, that really the cast could have just casted me up and sent me home and let me heal, and probably would have been fine. And then it gets to, do you want a plaster cast or a fiberglass cast? And fiberglass casts make much more money for them.
But look, it's stronger, it's easier,
well, and
it's lighter.
Because we found out through the MRI that there's other injury besides just the bone, then we need to have a different type of cast. And so, and so I leave this feeling very well cared for. I'm in good shape. I've got this cool fiberglass cast, and I'm on my way home. And the hospital made a whole bunch more money from my insurance company. No skin off my nose, and I'm leaving with the cast that I can take a shower in. That's kind of cool, And and so it's not a bad thing, but that the hospital just made a bunch more money off of me, and getting my insurance company to pay a whole bunch more. And I don't mind. Good, make the insurance company pay more. I don't have any problem with that. Send me home in a fiberglass cast. Great, that's fine. I don't mind that. And so it's not about right and wrong. It's about that system is built that way. And so when it gets into more important things than just a broken leg and the possibility of some broken blood vessels, when it gets into these larger scale things, our hospitals can make a whole bunch of decisions to extract bigger profit than just taking care of the greatest needs of the patient. And
that's a big difference between Europe and the United States.
Yep, that's right. And so I have more of a distrust of our medical system.